Hola, buenas tardes a todos. ¿Cómo estamos? Soy Ricardo Martín de Teques, creo que ya todos me conocen. Bueno, el día de hoy les vamos a hablar sobre la línea de productos de Skaarhoj y para eso nos acompaña Casper Skaarhoj, sí, directamente desde Dinamarca. Hey Casper, how are you? Did you unmute yourself?
Okay.
Excellent, excellent.
My microphone is unmuted. You can hear me, right?
Yes, perfect. Yeah,
Okay.
welcome to our first webinar about Skaarhoj products. Okay, thank you for taking your the time to to help us with this presentation. Okay, I'll do an introduction in Spanish. Okay, and then you can start. Perfect. Ok, entonces es Casper Skaarhoj, sí, es el presidente de la empresa Skaarhoj. Vamos a hablar el día de hoy sobre la línea de controladores universales Broadcast. Lo que vamos a hacer como lo hacemos siempre. Vamos a dividir la sesión en dos partes. Una parte que es la presentación en general de los productos, donde Casper nos va a hablar en todo detalle sobre la empresa, qué historia tienen los productos, hablar en general de todas las líneas, qué características tienen, qué ventajas ofrece estos productos sobre la competencia, en fin. Y al final vamos a dejar abierta la sesión de preguntas y respuestas para que vayan anotando sus preguntas o si quieren las pueden ir colocando en el chat y después ya al final podemos hacer una revisión de cada una de las preguntas, ¿ok? También obviamente nos acompaña Diego. Diego, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo estás?
¿Qué tal? Buenas tardes, Ricardo. Buenas tardes, Casper.
Entonces vamos a comenzar esta sesión solamente para que sepan, para aquellos que no hayan podido asistir, la vamos a grabar y después la vamos a hacer disponible. Ok, entonces vamos a comenzar. Ok, Casper, we're ready. You can start.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for joining tonight, or your afternoon, really. So I'm very enthusiastic about seeing what we can do in Latin America. So I'll do my best to tell you about who we are, what we do, and give you an idea that you can easily take to your markets. So first, yeah, I'll follow the agenda that you have already been told about. So let's just move on to the first slide. So first of all, we are based in Denmark, and this is what our office looks like. We are a small group of people. We are still a small company, so this is where we enjoy our lunch. We are mostly a bunch of young guys. I am 43 myself, and most of my employees are younger than me. Yeah, so I need to move this panel out of the way. So if we look at the history of Skaarhoj, then we started in 2012. And I would say, like in the garage. So we have been building gradually over the years. And only now, the last 2-3 years, we've been able to employ ourselves full time. So in the meantime, we have been working consultancies and also getting clever about our value proposition, really. So by having various production jobs with video helped us to develop panels because we needed them ourselves. So in that sense, we are a little bit like people in the open source movement. Open source software gets developed because somebody with the capabilities design a solution he needs himself, and then he shares it with the world. So kind of the same way around, we needed control panels to do our compact live production, and we began designing them ourselves, and now we have a company. So we also famous for pioneering access to the Blackmagic ATEM switches, and more or less when the switches came to market, we were quite quick to connect an Arduino computer microprocessor to the ATEM switches, so we could make small control panels that you could not otherwise do with a Mac or PC using the normal SDK. So we are all engineers. We have a background in engineering and also some video production. So that's kind of our field. And in 2016, after spending like 4 years on playing around with things, we designed something called Unisketch OS, which is a standard software that goes on any of our controllers. So, and I'll get back to that, because the really important thing about that is that with the same software on any controller, any of our controllers can access any camera or any switcher, or any router that we support. So that's a really important point, that we have the same software running on all controllers. So in 2017, we were at NAB, and for the first year, the second year, 2018, we were again at NAB. Both times we had like new controllers, so we have also had an extreme pace in terms of developing new stuff. It is slowing down now, because well, not slowing down, but we think we have hit a really nice mix of technology that we do not need to revamp next year, and we are looking very much forward to refining it, and also improving the value proposition by developing the software even more. So the last 2 years has really been consolidating the company and accelerating us, and now we are keeping a focus on maintaining the current program of controllers. We have like 25 or 30 different hardware controllers, and then some accessories. We will expand with what is called device cores, more device cores. That is support for new cameras, new switches, new routers, new software suites that we also integrate with. And we want to expand our reach into the world globally. So that was a little bit about the history, and now about the vision of Universal Broadcast Controllers. So take a look at this little animation. Okay, so that was one point about our value proposition. It is we integrate control of multiple different things. That's great if you want to create user-friendly solutions. So instead of having 3 panels, you can have one panel that will communicate with 3 different things. And by the configuration we also give you, it means that for compact production, for users who are not into broadcast in a traditional sense, you can create a control experience which is going right to the heart of the matter, instead of being confusing and offering a lot of extra things that people should not touch. But if they did, it would maybe mess up a production and so forth. So integrating control is a key point about what we can do with our controllers and the Unisketch software in the sense of it. And that's really what you see on this slide. So on this slide, you can see it illustrated that any form factor we create can actually talk to anything on the right side of the screen. Obviously, there are certain types of controllers, like an RCP, that's this guy, which is designed very well to do shading of cameras. And there will be other types of controllers, like PTC Fly or PTC Pro, which has a joystick that lends itself really well to operating a PTC camera. And other surfaces, again, like one in a rack unit with a lot of buttons, would typically be a routing panel. But there's nothing that keeps any of these panels, like the RCP could easily operate a router. And in fact, it becomes really useful because the RCP mainly controls a camera, but maybe you want a button to also switch a route on your video router, so the operator will see the sources shading with this particular RCP on the screen in front of him. So it's a really useful thing that we have this interaction between things. I have another little video for you. So I hope all of you, or most of you at least, have some video from these animations. Well, so yeah, universal control. The idea is our panels is an investment that will outlive the hardware that it might be controlling. And I think a really good example of this is already evident with the PTC controllers. We have people coming to us interested in our PTC controllers because you can work with, say, both a Panasonic camera and a Lumens camera, even at the same time. So the controller itself will help them, no matter in which direction they are migrating. Let's say they are going in the direction of Lumens cameras. They have Panasonic cameras, so they are still able to bring them together on the same production using the same controller. And even if they have a third brand coming in at some point, it's pretty likely that our controller will be possible to reconfigure to work with that brand. So that's another argument that the universal controllers will be able to work with hardware that we don't even know yet when we develop the support for it. Okay, and the way we support different hardware is by means of what we call device cores. So a device core is like an app you can install on a telephone. So it's very much like that. Imagine that a controller from Skaarhoj is like an iPad or an iPhone, any iOS device, and then the device cores are like the apps you install from the App Store on your iPhone or iPad to enable you to do something. In the same way, the Skaarhoj controller is the hardware, and you have the Unisketch OS on it, and then you install the device cores that is necessary to talk to a Panasonic camera or an ATEM switcher or TriCaster system. So that's what this slide shows you. Many of these are from our booklet. So if you know that booklet already, you have seen these pictures. Otherwise, you can download the booklet online, and you can also have hard copies. I tend to send them out to people when we ship, so that you can have extra hard copies for your customers. And we also like to highlight some of the signature technologies we have. Well, because we make universal broadcast controllers, we are fighting against fixed labels on buttons. And whenever we make a controller, which we sometimes have to, where we print on the buttons, it limits the controller, because now this button has the number 1, 2, or 3 on it, or it says cut or auto, or it says like on the Airfly, there are keys for the keyers. Now, so generally, what we like is to put displays above buttons and above knobs, so the display will reveal what this hardware component will do. And that makes the controllers hugely flexible. Of course, it also adds to the price. So this is why you'll find products that where you do not see so many displays, where we have instead printed on the keypads, because we think that it allows you to us to make a cheaper value proposition for a use case which is very common. We also have so that was the graphical OLED displays. We use RGB backlight in the buttons and knobs. We have developed something called 4-way buttons, and that's super awesome. You'll see it later, and it means that the button is like a small joystick, really, which can be useful, but shouldn't be used like that all the time. But you'll see. We have PoE by default, so all our controllers will be powered by a single cable, which is super neat as well and very popular. So I'll now go through some of these technical highlights by showing you small videos. And the first one you see right here is an example of how we can adjust values by 4-way buttons. So on this video, you can see that I can press the left and the right side of the button, and you see a value is going up and down. So it's actually like an encoder, but it's a button. And that's because the button in this case was assigned to do a volume adjustment. At this point, I'll just check in the chat if anything's happening. Okay, no. So I trust. Actually, I just want to check. Diego, Ricardo.
Everything is okay with us. If any question comes in, we can stop a little bit and we can continue, Casper.
Good. I just wanted to make sure that you had a chance to interrupt me if necessary. And it sounds like you do. Okay,
so far,
good.
so good, no problem.
So,
I'll let you know. Okay.
Good. I'll continue. And so another thing is that these buttons we have made are custom made. So we have actually spent a lot of time refining this technology so we can make this 4-way press. And the buttons, even though they are elastomer buttons, they have a nice tactile feel. So when you press them, they have a little clicky feeling. And we think that we have done that really well as a custom component. We have also, on many of our controllers, LED bars, which can be used for VU metering or confidence monitoring. The LED bars you see under the buttons here, they have 3 LEDs in them. So obviously they cannot show you the very detailed VU metering, but you can see peaking on them, for instance. You can also assign them to be tally bars or whatever else that parameter you want to attach to them that is like, you know, a warning sign or whatever. That's what these LED bars are. Over here we have a VU meter, of course, in a traditional sense. So you'll see that in our controllers in many models. Now you see another example of the 4-way button behavior. This is a shift key, but a normal shift key is press and you have shift, and then you press again and you are toggling on and off. In this case, we are actually cycling through 4 different states. And below the shift key, we use this LED bar to show which state we were at with the shift level that we chose with the button. So that was another example of 4-way buttons. We do also have something called modularity. We can, as an option, we can offer some of the modules with modularity, so you can snap them together. You will also find that we use motorized faders on various models. And the reason why I'm highlighting it like this is because the motorized faders are found on a number of units. We use them on the waveboard, and I know some of you have already shown interest in the waveboard, so that's one example. We also have the Colorfly, which is a multi-camera shading panel, and each fader would be attached to the iris of a camera. And we also have it on the RCP V2, which is a single camera RCP, but with a motorized fader on it, you can assign buttons on the RCP to be a camera selector, and then the fader will adjust itself to the iris of the next camera you just changed to, and so forth. So also motorized faders are a component you'll see in our technologies. We have signal and power over a single cable, so that's the PoE aspect. A technical note, the type of PoE we use is active PoE. So we have had some customers with passive PoE switches. They are cheaper switches, but we use the real PoE in our products with handshakes and all these things. It's a standard, and you can read it in our website if you want to know exactly what the standard is called, so you can check if the switch is supporting it. Another example is how we can build menus, and that's again not hard-coded, but you can see on this little video that the menu structure is essentially selected by 6 buttons that has a label that tells what menu item you enter into, and then the knobs on the top will adjust their parameters to whatever we selected for menus. And this is something you configure entirely, so it's really flexible. This will just highlight the fact that we do use a lot of RGB backlight, and we even do it on the knobs, as you can see, the encoders and the OLED displays as well. Here's another example of how we are very radical about using OLED legends for buttons. In fact, on the RCP V2, there is not a single fixed label for anything. Everything has OLED displays attached to them, so you can see and you can reassign functionality of the buttons on this device. And this is another example again, where it's very evident how flexible the OLED displays is in terms of making the controller, even a small one like this MiniFly, very flexible. And I think we have yet another RGB color-coded adjustment knobs. I'll not spend a lot of time on that, but it just looks cool. Oh, all right. So next point, let's go to models and applications, talk a little bit about that. So the first few slides will tell you a little bit about the various types of things we can use the panels for generally. So live production, so switches, generally switches, ATEM switches has been very popular for a long time. We just support TriCasters now, that's a new thing. vMix for a long time. Other switcher systems are welcome, but we have not had that many requests, so it's mainly ATEM switches, vMix, and now also TriCasters. You see some other logos down here, and that is switcher-related systems where QPilot, ASILPix, and WizRT, some more specialized things. We shade any type of camera, big studio cameras, mid-range cameras, POV cameras, like even from Marshall, which is not on here right now, PTC cameras, of course. We have a partnership with ARRI. We are very excited about that. We are going to work a lot with JVC, most likely. Panasonic is also interested, and it's developing super fast, the whole RCP scene. So our RCPs are universal RCPs that can work with many different cameras. Replay is also gaining momentum. So at IBC in Amsterdam, we showed it for Softron M Replay, and vMix has been around for a long time with our replay surface. And we also plan to support 3Play from NewTek. And that is development that we are going to start, so it's not done yet, but we have the plans. Obviously, our panels go very well into racks, in trucks and facilities, wherever you need such a control panel. We have some options there. We have all our panels will be able to integrate with anything. We have very, very small things like the microfly, the quick bar here. So, you know, for instance, today I have somebody coming to me and he says, can I have a single button that, switches a source on auxiliary 1 on my ATEM switcher? And he would be looking for microfly. And then, the quick bar has 6 buttons. And sometimes that's all you need. That's all you want to give someone, because if you give them a larger panel, they might just mess things up. So 6 buttons is just perfect for a producer who shouldn't do anything else but, enable a lower third or something. PTC controllers, we also do a lot of PTC control, and a main selling point, one controller can work with many different cameras even at the same time. And we are all the time adding new cameras. After IBC, we have another 5 different brands that we need to add. So it's also moving really fast. And then finally, broadcast audio. It's a new thing, but we made this panel, the Waveboard. It has 8 faders, motorized faders, VU meters, and a nice display section and button section on top. So you can, turn solo on and off, and enable, disable, whatever you assign to those buttons. And a section on the far left, which can, with some function keys, you can use to basically work as shift keys to reassign how the panel works. And this is a blank slide, is it? We'll see. Okay. Now, this would just be some slides. I think actually I might just skip many of these, because I think my main point here was that I wanted to show that we had some different cameras that, all these PTC cameras. No, I'm not going to take you through that. So that was the different applications for the products. So if we look at the products in each category, for PTC control, we have 3 types. We have the PTC Wiz, which is as small as you see right there. It is, in fact, my hands. So there's no manipulation. This is the size of the controller, and it is super small and neat for, and in this case, also pitched as a, co-integrated with a switcher system, since you see the cut on auto button. So it's in a category of itself, and it has a silicone joystick on it, which is a little unusual, but it works pretty well. The PTC Fly is a very popular item. The PTC Fly and PTC Pro are kind of equally popular, and PTC Fly is also really small. but it has a real joystick. You can also have it with the Hall effect joystick as an option. And then we have the PTZ Pro, which is the larger controller. And we often get asked, what is the difference? The difference is that you have more buttons on the PTZ Pro, more buttons. And those buttons give you direct access to recall, for instance, a preset. So to give you that as an example, on the PTZ Pro, you have dedicated buttons for camera selection, and then you have dedicated buttons for preset recall. If we go back to the PTZ Fly, you'll see on the PTZ Fly, there's only one row of buttons, and the button to the far right has, in this configuration that normally ships, been assigned to be a shift key. So as you press this key on the far right, you can change between selecting the camera and recalling a preset. So in that sense, we use the same 6 buttons to access these things. They are like a layer of functionality by using the shift key. This is also it's also the shift key that allows us to change what we see on the rotary encoders on top. So the menu selection is also done by the shift key on the far right, the white one on this picture. And on the PTZ Pro, all that is broken out on individual buttons. So they can do the same. They can work on the same cameras. But there's a difference in convenience, in size, and it all depends on what you prefer or your customers. So that would be the PTZ Pro. Then camera shading was a category we saw. We have the RCP V2, which is obviously the classic RCP form factor. We also do have a more narrow RCP called RCP Mini, but RCP V2 is like the flagship. And then we have the Colorfly. Oh, sorry, this is RCP V2 again. But now I highlight the fact that we do have this motorized fader on it, which makes it really useful for multi-camera control. So the RCP, again the RCP V2, again.
It's a star.
Okay, so we see it from the side. Yes, Colorfly, that's the one, which is another take on camera control where we have 4 cameras broken out on dedicated motorized faders on this controller. So live switching is another category, and if we start in the lower end, it would be the MiniFly, which is also a really compact controller, and it's meant for small productions. Obviously, it has 6 buttons with numbers, which would make it perfect for a 4 to 6 camera shot. But again, the shift key allows us to access more sources. It allows us to reassign the top row of buttons to do other things like macro recall and key on off and so forth. You actually saw it on one of the videos previously where the displays were changing when I filmed this particular controller. So I would call it the Swiss Army knife of broadcast control. That's how we have been pitching it. So the LiveFly is a bigger brother, and I have to say it's actually a fairly popular controller, and I can see why, because again, here you see on the LiveFly we have almost the perfect one-to-one relation of 1 button, 1 display. There's only the fade to black, shift, cut, and auto buttons which do not have a display to reveal what the function of this component is. So obviously it is a super powerful controller because the displays are here in those quantities. I really like it. So the AirFly, that would be our budget offering. So at the same price of the LiveFly, actually, you get a larger surface with more direct access to more things, but at the expense of the displays. So in this case, you can see that we have cut down on those things, labeled the buttons 1 through 10, media player, color. In this case, the keypad is designed for ATEM switches. So when you purchase an AirFly, you will you'll have to tell us if you plan to use it with ATEM switches or vMix system or a TriCaster. In the case of TriCaster, it is we have a keypad layout coming up. So at this point in time, we do not have that finalized. Actually, we would like your input if you want. But that's the AirFly. So the AirFly, same price as the LiveFly. So the AirFly Pro is what you're going for if you want those displays instead of having fixed labels on the buttons. as you can see on this picture. Then I also want to present you this one, Rec Fusion Live. Excuse me. Is an example of a controller which has integration between PTC control and live switching. It's in a 2 rack unit device, but the cool thing is that this one sits really well on the table, so it is developed so that it can stand on a table and still have a little tilt, so it's ergonomically really well, but it can also be mounted in a rack unit. Very powerful device for flyaway kits, mobile production, combining live switching and PTC control. And then we have some top-of-line controllers like Master Key 36, and yeah, they have the classic NKK hard plastic buttons actually, and all the others you have seen so far has been equipped with the elastomer buttons that we developed ourselves. So routing and utility, I'll try to make this quick. It's just rack units with the same type of buttons, LED bars that you have seen on some of the other things. The RackFly Duo is a RackFly Uno, but with 2 rows of buttons. And of course, it can be used with any hardware that we have already been talking about. Good examples would be routers in this case, obviously. Rack Fusion 1 is a nice utility panel that has encoders and these 2x2 blocks of buttons with displays, so it's really flexible and can be used in many different cases. And then of course we have the Quick Bar, which was this super small panel, and then the Microfly, even smaller panel like this guy. Finally, the waveboard in the category of broadcast audio, and also, yeah, there's a little commercial of the waveboard. So just quickly, yes, of course we have the OLED displays, RGB buttons, programmable keys out here, indicative LED bars, so they can be used for VU metering and motorized faders. Yes, I have. Yeah, so that's our take on a good audio panel for broadcast. Replay, the XC8 replay panel. Yes. Okay, so we've been around the various applications. You have seen the range of products we have, and as I said, we are not expecting to give you a whole new type of controller you have not seen before. What we plan for NAB 2019 will be to revamp a few controllers, so basically upgrade them in terms of technology. But we are keeping it pretty stable, and we are investing a lot into the software that will make the utility of the panel even greater, so that we can expand to control new devices. So at this point, I would like to look at Unisketch and configuration, because that's the next question, is how can we, in practical terms, map this hardware to do things on broadcast hardware? And that's what we are getting to right now. So we'll do that by watching some videos at this point so you can see how it works. So for instance here, we are having the MiniFly controller, and if we want to define what this button does, we click the button, and then we select from this list the action. So in this case, it would be to put source number 1 on program of an ATEM switcher. So that's how easy you can make this programming of the Skaarhoj controller. It would be equally easy if you have a controller that's already configured, like in this case, and you want to reprogram what this button did because it already had actions on it. So it's just remove that action, and then in this case reassign it to select source number 5 on auxiliary 3 on an ATEM switcher. In this case, I chose an option called hold down, and hold down means that it will select source 5 on auxiliary 3 for as long as I press down the key, and when I release the key, it will fall back to the source that was on auxiliary 3 before I pressed the key. That's the meaning of hold down. we have options like hold down and toggle. Toggle is, you know, going forth and back between 5 and then the previous 5 and the previous. You can also just set it so it doesn't know what was there before, of course. You can have multiple actions on one button. So we can watch this case. We can see that we have a video hub routing input 31 to output 41. And now we are going to do this for a video, you know, take another input, and that's input number 10 is routed to output number 2. So when I press this button, I will now make 2 routes on the video hub, and now I'm even adding that it also will make a change to auxiliary 4 on the ATEM switcher with the toggle mode. Probably this is just for show, but now this button does 3 things: 2 routes on a video hub and 1 auxiliary 4 source delegation on an ATEM switcher. So in many cases, you need to set up many things quickly. So there are features also, so where you can select, like in this case, 6 buttons. I want to assign sources to auxiliary 2, and now I want to copy this action to other buttons. So it's very easy. You just insert, change, insert. Sorry. So this is how quickly I set up 6 similar actions on a panel. When you do all these configurations, you can of course give them a name. You can also provide a description. And that will be necessary if people, they like to create different configurations. It's really nice that they can also give them names and descriptions to keep track of them all. Important things like setting IP addresses. So whenever we enable device calls on Skaarhoj controllers, they will be listed like this, and you will of course have to tell the controller which IP address they should be found on. So this is how you do that. Simple web interface, type in the IP address, save the settings, and you're done. In all these nice displays, it's also possible to add graphics. So you can upload PNG files, stuff like that, to the server, and you need to do a little photoshopping first to make sure that the files are nice when they are only represented by black or white dots. And finally, an example of how you can add a new device core. So this is basically how, you know, like how you install an app on a Skaarhoj controller. So there are a lot of things you can choose from. Now we added a video hub, and then I can click a button, and you can see that in my list of actions, the new device I just added, the video hub, is available, and I can pick it and set the various parameters.
Very powerful. Very powerful. Yeah, it is.
And I think it's now doing kind of the same thing, or is it doing it again, or what? Okay, I think let's just watch this one, because there's one thing I want to make sure that you understand. And yes, I think this bridges nicely into something I'm going to show you a little bit. Because what you just saw in this video is that we do supply a number of default configurations with our controllers. I have found over the 6 years I've been doing this, soon 7, I have found that if you tell people that you have to configure everything yourself every time, they get scared. They want a solution to a problem that somebody else designed. They don't want to have a do-it-yourself kit, in a sense, every time. So, in fact, the main way people will experience Skaarhoj products when they open the product, and that could be one like this, okay? So here we have a mini fly, and it's taken from the shelf. We open the box, and the first thing you see is this one. So it's like a little welcome letter. And in this letter, you can see there's a little description of how to upgrade the firmware, how to set the IP address, all the practicalities you need to know. And on this little piece of paper, it tells you what your controller does out of the box. Because the fact is that since it can do all these many things, and people can order it for a number of different reasons, you can see on this note that this controller has currently 5 different default configurations. And the one that is currently loaded onto it is this one called ATEM Pro Audio. And there's a little description of what it does. And then this sleeve will tell the user how to change the configuration. If the configuration they read about is not the one they want, they can read how to change it to one of the other default configurations. So what you have seen now in this presentation is the power that is very important for you to understand. If you are a value-adding reseller, if you're a system integrator, you will love that stuff. But your customers should not be scared away by it. You can sell that as a service. I'll get back to that. But the customers, when they get a product, if they just get it to get started, they will get a default configuration that does something meaningful out of the box. And that's why that's what a default configuration is and why it's so important. And basically that brings us to this whole topic of what is the role of a reseller if not just moving a, in this case, a blue box over to the customer. We think that the Skaarhoj controllers offers you a great opportunity to also make money on consultancy, on your advice to the customer. Suddenly you know something that they don't. They can't, well, they can watch my videos online, but surely your experience with Skaarhoj controllers will enable you to create solutions in a snap for customers that they will be very thankful that you helped them do, and that will make it clear that you have a reason to be their preferred partner in broadcast hardware. So that's and I would like to hear how you perceive that during the questions session we can have soon. Now I just need to see how many slides I have left. Actually, there's not so many, except that I do have a little. Yeah, I think I want to stop here and then see where it goes. I do have a small demonstration I want to give if there's interest in it. And also, I've been talking for 45 minutes now, so I think it's time to spend the last 15 minutes or how long it will take on questions.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Casper. I think we have a few questions, right? One of them is from Juan Carlos. He's asking if you publish and keep updated the list of supported devices that you control, or if you have like a link or where they can find them.
Yes, there is.
Yes. So you're still all able to see my screen. And let me see, I think under support, we have an item in the menu called device cores. And on this page, you'll see an overview of which devices we are currently supporting. You should also make notice of the state of the support. Some device cores are mature, so you can expect them to work. Some device cores are in development, so they may not work, and development would be when they are in beta state or alpha state. I don't know if we have any alpha stage here. And then you also have the ones called planned. And if a device core is planned, you can be almost certain that it doesn't work. But we have included it because we have intentions to develop it. And it is not clear where in the process we are. Maybe we are actively working on it. Maybe we are allocating time in our development schedule. Maybe we are at the point where we are still trying to reach out to for instance, the manufacturer of a camera that we want to integrate, and figuring all those things out. But that would be the page where you go if you want to see what we control. You're very welcome to suggest new devices as well.
There were also a question from Carlos from Mexico, asking about support for PTC control of data video cameras.
Yes. We are looking into that, and I think some of the new IP-based data video cameras might be possible to control, but I cannot confirm it directly yet. I would love to hear a model number,
okay,
and then I can check. So data video is on the radar, but currently I cannot confirm.
Okay. Okay. We will get the model information from Carlos and share with you soon. A los resellers, aprovechen a preguntar a Casper lo que haga falta. Lo tienen aquí, ha sido muy completa su presentación, pero creo que hay muchos que tenían buenas preguntas para hacer. Es el momento, no se queden callados.
Sí, aquí hay que aprovechar mucho porque la experiencia de él, obviamente él es el presidente de la compañía y él es ingeniero, entonces él conoce perfectamente los productos. Cualquier duda que tengan sobre la configuración, el control o sobre modelos específicos, la pueden aprovechar para hacerla ahora, ¿ok? Igual él va a hacer una demostración ahora en vivo, sí, un poquito más adelante, para que vean exactamente cuál es el proceso, ¿no? de configuración para los controladores. Como él bien menciona, son controladores universales que virtualmente pueden controlar cualquier dispositivo dependiendo del tipo de controlador que se esté usando, ya sea para cámaras robóticas, ya sea para botoneras para switchers o sistemas para control de audio, etcétera, etcétera. Okay. No sé si hay más preguntas, Diego. Are there any more questions for now?
I don't think so. Everyone is scared about asking, Ricardo. I don't know what's happening.
O pueden preguntar en español y podemos traducirlo al inglés. No hay problema.
I see a question about Ethernet before list of lenses supported. Okay, so I'll just answer that question from the chat. The way we control before lenses with the Ethernet before link and the SDI before link is using the analog voltage on the lens that ranges from 2.5 to 7.5 volts, and that drives the servo. And that is the lens support. So if you have a specific lens, I would look for, into the manual of that lens, if it supports the analog control voltage in that range. We can offer you the pin diagram if you want to check, but I do not have like a supported list of lenses. Does the Universal RCP support Panasonic studio cameras? Not yet. We are working on it. We have the interest of Panasonic, and it may go as high as to studio cameras, but I'm not sure. We'll see first, but we are moving in an interesting direction with Panasonic directly. So, but shoot me an email so you're interested, because when I have people asking about these things, and what I usually do is where I track all our development projects, I'll put in your email if you're interested in support for a given camera, like a Panasonic studio camera. I'll note down your email and the model you were interested in, because when it might be useful for me to connect to you when finally we do it, or if I need some more feedback about your particular interest and so on. And frankly, it's usually also good to know that there are people out there. I mean, the thing is, if I need to persuade Panasonic to work with me on supporting their cameras with my RCP, it is very useful to be able to point to a handful of customers and say, actually, I have people standing right here that would love to see this support, and they are your customers as well. If I can tell Panasonic that, they are much more likely to listen. So there are some lenses I see. Okay, we can take a look at it. If you are able to send me the manual as a PDF file, we can check it. Okay, so we're still waiting for questions, I suppose. Diego, Carlos,
yes.
Sorry,
yes,
Ricardo. Good. So in the meantime, I suggest that you just put it in on the chat. But I actually did have a little project that I thought was fun to do, and let me just see. So if you're in for it, right here I have an airfly. It's going out to a customer, and he wants it pre-configured. So in this case, I've agreed to do that for him. So now I plug it into my PoE source here, and let me just see. This is my USB cable. So with only the PoE cable going into it, you can see that now it's connected to my ATEM switcher. If I press here, I'm operating an ATEM switcher, and you still see my screen. So if I changed over to the ATEM software control right here, you can see as I'm pressing the cut button, you see the change in the software control as well. Okay. Now this customer, he had the wish to add another ATEM switcher to it. So now I'm showing you what happens when I connect the USB cable and I want to change the configuration. You have the Skaarhoj firmware updater app, and you see here, this is what happens when I connect this one. So now I take out the cable, and when I take out the cable, it disappears. So I put in the cable now again, and you see the controller here, and I press now the online configuration button, okay? So I'm now at the online configuration, and now you see exactly which default configuration is loaded onto it. Currently, we have the standard ATEM switching configuration loaded onto it. I now press the advanced button. I'm gonna put this down on the table. And as I press the advanced button, I now come to the configuration interface for the controller. I'll now add a device because my customer wanted this. He wanted the controller to control one ATEM switcher mainly, but he also wanted it to be connected to another ATEM switcher so he could do some changes on the auxiliary bus. So we are going to help him do that by adding another ATEM switcher to the controller. So therefore I click add device call. I now add a new device call, and that will be the ATEM switcher. I save these settings, and as I have saved the settings, I go back to controller configuration. I hope you can see this on your screens. So I now go back to controller configuration. Notice that we have two, I think I can actually make it a little bigger. I have two ATEM switches now on the controller, and I go all the way to the bottom where you can see the IP address of the first one, and I think the IP address of the second one. I need to confirm that. So this is the first ATEM switcher. I now try to connect to the second one. Yes, I was right. That's on 242. So like this. Okay. So I can save those settings. So I've set up the IP address of ATEM 1 and ATEM 2. And now I want to, what I want is, when I'm in the user section, when the user presses this one, I want this row of buttons to do something for me. And you just see, I'll just hold down the shift key and select the first, this one, and this one. So the first 4 buttons will now be assigned to do routing on the auxiliary bus in case we are in the user state over here. So I now select this, you can see this is all the actions for ATEM switcher number 1. And then I scroll down to ATEM switcher number 2. And here I select auxiliary 1, source number 1, okay? And then I go down on the next button here, and then I press insert and select source number 2. And on the next one, insert source number 3. So quite quickly I get 4 actions assigned to those buttons. I save these settings now. And like I showed you before, I could now give it a name. I think because we don't have time for naming, we will not do that. But I'll just go back to my firmware application, the Skaarhoj firmware application right here, and I press check for updates. So what happens now is that the configuration I did online that is stored in our database is now being generated into a firmware that is loaded onto the controller. And in a moment, we'll see the controller will now connect to 2 ATEM switches. And when I press that user button, we should experience that the first 4 buttons on the upper row will operate that auxiliary bus. In the meantime, questions?
I have a question for you, Casper.
Yep.
Do you, obviously, in order to configure any device, you need to go online all the time. You need to be online, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, if you don't have internet access, there is no way that you can configure a unit.
No, it's not entirely true, actually.
Okay.
I can show you that. But and I can do it right away, actually. So I can tell you what you need to go online to do.
Okay.
If you want to completely change what a controller talks to, like if it's not talking to a Blackmagic switcher, but instead it's talking to a TriCaster, in that case, you need to go online. The reason is you are installing a new device core, okay? Mm-hmm. So when you install new device cores, like apps from the App Store on your telephone, you need internet access. But you can do local configuration that as long as you only operate with the device codes that already installed on your controller. And okay. I'll show you that right now, actually. So if you watched in the background, you saw that my firmware was now successfully updated. And we can open the serial monitor. The serial monitor reveals a little bit about what happens inside the controller. And now I press the reset button so we can see what happens when it boots. And I just want to do this to show you that as the controller is now resetting itself and booting up, notice this. You can see that we have 2 device cores. It's ATEM 0 and ATEM 1 on 2 different IP addresses. We are connecting to both ATEM switches, and the connection apparently was successful, okay? So if I go back to my ATEM control panel, if I go to the first one, you can see, and I think you can also see, you can see the controller more or less here, right?
Yep. Yep.
And I press now the cut button, and you can see both the software and the panel is changing. And now I go to the user section right here. And then you see those buttons over there, they are actually coming from the other panel because I just programmed it that way. And now I changed the IP address, so we see the software control of the second panel. You can see it's now a different ATEM switch I'm connected to. It's a Production Studio 4K. And as I'm pressing, oh, we need to see the auxiliary bus up here. Or I can just change that auxiliary bus. You can see when I press this button, those sources on the auxiliary bus is changing on the second ATEM switcher. And how, I mean, that took me like a few minutes to just make this change. So your question was, can we do this without going online on the web server? Yes, we can. If I press the button called local configuration, and if my laptop has to be on the same network as the controller, then you get a local web interface. That's what you see right here, okay? And now we can go into section number 2. And for instance, I can now assign this section to be colored differently when I'm in this user mode. So for instance, I will go and select a different color. And I want that color to be purple. And as soon as I save on this button, what we should see is that buttons on this row will now be purple. So I cross my fingers hoping that it will actually happen.
Usually works for the demo.
Yeah, it usually works for the demo.
Usually. There you
Oh,
Oh,
yes. And what you just saw there, that the local configuration where you do not need to be online is so powerful, because as you press the save button, these changes are immediately effective on the controller. So you can really play until you have the perfect configuration. And at that point, you should be able to push it back to the server online, where it can be stored and safe and secure. So it doesn't, I mean, if you load a different firmware on your controller, then it would be erased. But you can push it back to the server in the future. It's something we're working on these days, so it's actually not ready yet. But that's how it's gonna work in a few days or a week or two. And that's very exciting, because it's very flexible and quick to do this local configuration to set up a controller to the perfect configuration.
Well, the fact that you need to go online for a new configuration is good also, because you can have every setup updated. I mean, you work on something that is up to date every time the user try to load, right? I mean, okay.
Yeah, there are also sometimes we need to update the implementations when firmware changes happen. We have had firmware changes on many different devices. It can be cameras that can do more.
Yes,
it can be routers that change protocol. It can be switches that change protocol. So for all these things, you need a firmware update, and all you need to do is to connect the controller and press the button check for updates, and it will get the latest version from online.
That's great.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, let's see if there's more questions. ¿Alguien más quiere preguntar algo que quieran ver, alguna duda? Aprovechen.
¿Algo en español? ¿Alguien que quiera?
Sí, alguien que pueda hacer la pregunta en español sin ningún problema. Aprovechen la oportunidad. Pues se dieron cuenta lo fácil que es configurar los equipos, ¿no? Es bien interesante, porque pueden hacerlo localmente o pueden hacerlo online, pero online pueden descargar todos los cores, los núcleos, ¿no? Y local es lo que le estaba mostrando, ¿no? Los núcleos que ya vienen preconfigurados son los que van a tener acceso y van a poderlos personalizar los botones. De otra manera accesan online y después pueden, ¿cómo se llama? Bajarlos y configurarlo, y lo que le está explicando él es que probablemente una semana o dos van a tener la posibilidad de, una vez que graban esa configuración, subirla online, para que si en el futuro necesitan por alguna razón reescribir y cargar una configuración antigua, lo puedan hacer. Eso es bien interesante, ¿no? Es como una manera como tenerlo en la nube, las configuraciones, si lo quieren ver de esa manera, ¿no?
Y tengan en cuenta siempre lo importante de tener estos equipos con la posibilidad de cambiar de un switcher ATEM a un TriCaster o a un BMX. Eso, lo mismo con las cámaras, o cuando hablamos de los PTC controllers o los RCP, poder mudar de un equipo a otro, la verdad, deben pensarlo como una ventaja increíble.
Okay, I think we have a question, Casper, from, let me see here, from Alex. He's asking, how about Grass Valley cameras and switchers? Is there support for that brand?
Oh, yeah. I just managed to answer him in the meantime.
Okay.
So, yeah, I would say no. We do have some support for kayak switches, but that's really, really old and not very extensive. And we frankly haven't had anybody really asking for it. So at this point in time, it's not a big focus for us. The more users asking for Grass Valley, the more interested we will be. So that's really what drives it.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Let me see.
Julian is also asking about the change. Yeah, Julian, that's it. That's correct.
I agree.
Yeah.
Paco is asking about the whiteboards. Yes, we already discussed about that. And by the way, the ones that already ordered whiteboards, Casper just confirmed this morning that they are shipping by the end of next week, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So some of you I know that have placed orders for whiteboards, for demo units. So we'll, you know, they will be shipping to us by the end of next week. So that's good news. All right. One more thing. I mean, if anybody else hasn't placed an order yet for demos, I mean, you should do that. I mean, because I think it's important for you to have units in-house so that you can show the customers how they work, because this is a huge advantage. Okay, esta es una ventaja muy importante. Los que no han pedido sus demos, aprovechen, pídanlos. Es una buena forma de mostrar los productos y mostrar esta tecnología, esta funcionalidad de lo fácil que es programar los botones, cómo configurar para los diferentes dispositivos. Es bien importante porque de otra manera el cliente no va a entender, ¿no?, cómo funciona esta tecnología y la versatilidad que tienen. Okay, I think we don't have any more questions, Casper. I don't know if you want to add something else.
The only thing that I was thinking about that would be nice to tell in relation to doing configuration, being a system integrator, value-adding reseller is, if you develop a configuration that you think is really nice, let's say it's the AirFly package with your configuration that you want to like bundle to your customers with cameras and a switcher system, there is a way you can maintain a configuration and have multiple users use it at the same time. It's really simple. Anybody can really do it. So if you go to the online configuration that I was making just before, this one, then when you go to manage configurations, you will give your configuration my super cool config, okay, a name. You can give it a description for my configuration, and then you can share it. So when you press that share link, you get an ID, and this ID can be subscribed to by your customers. And then multiple customers can then use that single configuration you are maintaining. So when you update that configuration with new features or something like that, then they just need to update the firmware on the controller, and then they'll get access to that configuration. Yeah, that's just
really
one
cool.
thing that came to mind.
That's really cool. That means that, for example, if you have several customers, right? I mean, that have a similar workflow, right? Like a TV station, they have their different TV stations, right, all over the country, and they have the same device. I mean, you set it up once, and then you share with the other ones. So they just they just need to download it, and all set. They don't need to do anything else. So that's a really cool feature. That's
correct. And
yeah, go ahead.
And it's very easy because when they subscribe to a configuration, they can, if they make local changes to that configuration, then they have saved that configuration into their own controller. So it's like copying your configuration and you know, developing more on it and so on. So there's this powerful sharing feature that can be used in many ways.
Perfect. Excellent. That's really good. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, obviously, you know, we have been way over the hour, but that's good. That means that, you know, there is a lot of interest. So just a quick reminder: this session has been recorded, so Diego will make it available later for everybody. So I'm pretty sure, you know, some people were not able to make it, so we'll send an email with the link to the session, right, so that you can watch it. And if anybody has any questions for Diego, for me, for Casper, you know, you can always send us an email. I will do it in Spanish. Con esto llegamos al final de la sesión. Cualquier duda que tengan, nos lo pueden hacer llegar a mí, a Diego, a Casper. Esta sesión fue grabada, entonces la vamos a hacer llegar después. Diego les va a hacer llegar el enlace para que puedan descargarla y todos aquellos que no pudieron asistir a esta presentación lo puedan ver. ¿Ok? Bueno, con esto llegamos al final. Le damos las gracias a Casper. Casper, we thank you very much for your help here.
Thank you, Casper.
It was really interesting. I mean, it's very educational. So we'll hope to do some additional webinars in the future. I mean, more technical, very specific ones. Like we could invite only technical guys, right, from our channel, and actually do very specific sessions. So that's something to think about for the future. All right. So thank you, guys. Gracias a todos. We'll see you in the next webinar. Gracias. Hasta luego. Chao. Bye.
Thank you.